Is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And I'm sure, just like myself, you guys are still disappointed in last night's 2-1 Union defeat against Orlando City. I'm still really confused how that ball didn't go in the back of the net in the last few seconds of the game. Jack Elliott, of all people, is still forward off of a corner kick, I think. Dribbles past some defenders, and ball doesn't find the back of the net. McGlynn had a chance. Quinn Sullivan, excellent last night. I'm sure we'll talk about Quinn here in a little bit. But, man, just what a crazy night it was in Orlando. And it all started because Jim Curtin said in his press conference today, our best friend Lightning delayed practice today, or interrupted practice. And the game last night, an hour delayed. And we saw a 2-hour delay against DC United. Will the game get delayed against Inter Miami? Yeah, if you're a betting man, probably put some money on it because it is Florida down in the summertime. But enough of that. To talk about the Orlando game, to talk about MLS news, to talk about Inter Miami is a guy that you guys have seen on Twitter, I am sure. He is a reporter for Philly Union Nation. He is Skyler Hoffner. Skyler, thanks for joining me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very excited to talk Union soccer.
Absolutely. And I was telling you before you joined and everything, and I was like, am I going to make a joke? Yeah, I probably am going to make a joke. Skyler and me are probably the only two people who never asked Jim Curtin any questions in the press conference. So, yeah, it is good to actually hear you talk for once and just get your thoughts on this Orlando game into Miami, the latest Union news. So it should be a good night. But like I do with every new guest on the podcast, I always want to find out the backstory, how they got into the Union. And in your case, how'd you get into covering the Union? So take it away, Skyler.
Well, I've been a soccer fan my whole life. I've been playing soccer since I was 3 years old. Got into watching the Premier League when I was young. And right when the Union came down to Chester, I was like, Mom, can we go to the soccer game that's down in Chester? She was like, we have a soccer team? I'm like, yeah. So we went the first year, fell in love with Sebastian Latou, fell in love with sports writing, and I joined Philadelphia Sports Nation, Union Nation, and started writing and finally got into the press box three years ago.
Absolutely. I love it. And you're actually currently a student at Temple University as well, right?
Yep, I'll be going to Temple this fall. I have 2 more years there and then hopefully find some job in the sports writing industry.
Really cool to see you covering the Union in college and everything. I was like, you don't see many young people covering the team. So to see you, a young blood, and going to school for this, yeah, you love to see it. And hopefully after college is done, be cool. One of these newspapers or whatever hires you to cover the Union because you're doing a fantastic job for Philly Union Nation, covering all things Philadelphia Union.
Definitely. That's my dream.
So like I told you guys, MLS news, which we'll probably just talk about the Philadelphia Union transfer news, rumors, because nothing's official yet. But there are some other teams to talk about. Then, like I said, we'll talk about Orlando City. We'll get into Blunder of the Week, into Miami, all that jazz. So without further ado, let's just go straight into the news. So starting off, let's not talk about Philadelphia Union. Let's talk about one of last night's opponents that the Union faced. That is Orlando City's Chris Mueller. He has signed a pre-contract with Scottish side Hibs, which goes into effect in January. Now, there's reports out there that Chris and Orlando were talking about a brand new contract for Chris, and obviously they couldn't come to an agreement, and now he's off to the Scottish Premier League, and this is the second American that we've seen in this transfer window. Christian Ramirez, who formerly played for Houston Dynamo, I believe, went over to Scotland as well. I don't know. It's kind of a weird move for me because the Scottish Premier League's not one of the top 5 leagues in the world. Is it better? Is it worse than MLS? I'm not quite sure. But, for Chris Mueller, for Ramirez, for just any player, I mean, I've got to imagine from a young boy, like you said, Skyler, yourself, you got into soccer by watching the Premier League. And so I'm sure for the players, it's the same way. They grew up watching European soccer and they had dreams to go and play in Europe. For Chris Mueller, now he gets to go ahead and play in Scotland. If he wants to play Champions League soccer, it's probably not going to happen at Hibs. But for Chris to get that dream, I guess it's pretty cool. Just your thoughts on seeing these young Americans just continuing to get the chance to play in Europe.
It's a change of scenery for them, definitely, and it gives them more, how can I say it, vision from European, GMs and stuff like that across the overseas, and hopefully they dream of getting to the top 5 leagues, like you said. That's their dream. When you're over here in the States, you want to go over to Europe. You don't want to stay just in the States. You want to play in those teams like Real Madrid, Barcelona. So that's their dream, to go over Europe, even if it is with a smaller side in Europe. They can keep developing and hopefully get to a top 5 league one day.
Absolutely. It's what we saw with Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie. Now, I know Chris Mueller is a little bit older than both of those guys, but, just getting your feet in the water in Europe and everything, and you play well, then it's going to attract attention from the bigger clubs, like you said. So just from the American standpoint, love to see young Americans just get a chance in Europe, and I see no reason why it won't continue. I know Kyle Duncan for the Red Bulls is being linked with a move over in France, and I believe the Bundesliga. I was reading in The Athletic, a team, I forget where I was reading it earlier before we recorded this. Apparently a team offered the New England Revolution $5 million now for Tejan Buchanan. It was at 3.5. Now it's at $5 million. So I said the last episode that these $5 million players in a couple of years are going to turn into 10 million plus players. So you love to see young players in MLS get a chance, but young Americans, we all have a soft spot for that. But moving on, Toronto FC, they announced that their forward Akinola has suffered an ACL injury when he was on international duty with Canada, meaning he will miss the remainder of the Gold Cup and the rest of the MLS season. For a guy whose future was up in doubt, will he represent Canada? Will he represent the USA? Yeah, he really came on the scene last season for Toronto FC, where Josie Altidore was doing nothing, and it looked like Josie was passing. Now here comes this young Canadian kid, Akinola, and tears it up for Toronto FC, and for a club that's near the bottom half of the Eastern Conference and just MLS in general, to lose a young, promising striker like that, it's a huge blow for Toronto FC. But for the Union, look, I said it last week, we always want to be playing against the best competition, but playing Toronto in a couple weeks when they don't have Akinola, it's pretty good for us.
You always want to see the Union playing the opponent's best players, but stuff happens like that. Injuries happen in sports, but you just got to deal with it. And I'm sure Toronto will be fine with Josie Altidore back on the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Josie Altidore scored a couple games ago. So for Toronto fans, I'm sure you guys aren't listening to this podcast, but if you guys are listening to it, thank you guys. But you guys aren't complaining about Josie Altidore. I know you guys want to get Dom Dwyer scoring goals like we've seen him do in MLS over the years, but this isn't a Toronto podcast. We all know it's a Philadelphia Union, so no more time on that. So let's go ahead and talk about the 2 latest Philadelphia Union rumors, with the Union being linked with 2 Brazilian strikers. Before we talk about those 2 players, Jim Curtin was asked about the latest player in today's press conference, and this is what Jim had to say.
Yeah, like I always say, guys, Ernst and Chris are always looking to upgrade the squad. I'm happy with the players that we currently already have, but if any improvements or any improvements come in, they're going to be players that maybe do something a little different than what we currently have, and can give maybe a change off the bench for us. So, the nothing's official yet, nothing's finalized. So can't really comment on the player that I saw mentioned. But at the same time, look, we're always trying to upgrade and strengthen the team. We'll look at different players throughout this time period. Obviously, we do have an eye on Champions League and getting our team as strong as possible for that game. And I'm confident that the squad that we currently have can get the job done. But any additions, would be welcomed as well.
So that player that Jim Curtin is talking about is Matheus Davo. He is a 21-year-old Brazilian striker on loan at Brazilian second division club Guarani. In 501 minutes played this season, he has 3 goals and 5 assists. Davo is on loan from Corinthians. And so I've got to imagine this is probably the player that the Union are going to sign. They were linked with Palmeiras striker, a 19-year-old who's only just got caught up to the first team this season for Palmeiras. He only has one goal this season. He's 19 years old, and the Union apparently had a bid of $2.5 million accepted, but then Palmeiras wanted to put in a sell-on clause, and the Union said, all right, we're going to look someplace else. And then a week later, now here they are linked with Matheus Davo. Like I said, he's a 21-year-old striker on loan in the second division in Brazil. But his parent club, Corinthians, apparently are going to cut up that loan deal, loan him to the Philadelphia Union for 6 months, and then the Union have an option to buy Davo at the end of the season. Now, I know this is a player that a lot of people on social media are complaining about. They're like, oh, we need a proven goal scorer. First, it started with everybody saying we need a striker. I think all of us know that we need a striker. But here's the thing. I think a lot of fans are still looking for that proven goal scorer. Everybody wants that, right? But we've seen the last couple of years with Ernst Tenner is every single player that he's signing is 25 years old or younger. And so Ernst Tenner, when he signed Marco Fabian, we're seeing a trend with, like I said, him signing these young players. I don't think Marco Fabian was this guy. I think there was probably Jay Sugarman saying, hey, let's attract international fans in here. And Ernst Tenner is looking at these players that are young, that he can develop, and then sell to Europe to get money for the club. You're not doing that with Marco Fabian. And I know some people are like, oh, Mario Balotelli. We hear that every single year. Diego Costa's out there, a free agent, 32 years old. No, that it's a name that would attract some fans, right? But one, it's going to cost a lot of money in wages. Two, probably disrupt the locker room. And Jim Curtin and Ernst have been very, very, very high on saying, we have a good locker room. We don't want any big characters. The superstar is the team, not any individual players. So these younger guys, like, it makes sense for the Union to go and look in South America. I know we talked to the last episode or the one before that about the Union being linked with Venezuelan midfielder Jesus Bueno, who, again, is another young guy. And why are the Union getting involved in South America, where I believe a couple months ago, Ernst Tenner said, yeah, we probably won't pay too much attention in South America. We'll look elsewhere around Europe for players. Well, that's really simple. Look at COVID. The South American market got hit really, really hard, where these teams are desperate for money. We just saw Teles a couple months ago sign for New York City. I know he hasn't sent the world on fire. We saw Brenner sign for $15 million with Cincinnati. Teams in Brazil are just trying to get as much money as they can for these guys. And granted, Davo or Gabriel Silvia, who was the guy from Palmeiras who the Union were linked with, neither one of those guys are going to cost you $5+ million. Maybe $1 million, maybe $1.5 million for Matheus, but again, it's a loan that they're saying. So you're just not going to see a ton of money spent. And I know everybody wants that big superstar striker, but anybody listening to this podcast that's questioning Ernst Tenner, I got to ask you, what's wrong? Because what signing has he got wrong? And I guess I was talking about Ernst Tenner not signing older players. I guess Andrew Rutten is an older player. They weren't going to resell him. But why not take a flyer on a guy that's an American that's not going to cost an international roster spot? And nothing was there. And look, didn't cost the Union hardly anything bringing him in here. But why not get in young South American players in here where you see it all the time in Europe? Real Madrid, Barcelona, these guys love going to Brazilian sides, spending $30+ million on some Brazilian sensation nobody's heard about, but apparently he's the next Neymar, the next Ronaldinho. And so I'm not saying that Matheus Davo is going to be the next Brazilian superstar, but why not kick the tires? See what you have here. And Jim Curtin, you guys heard it. He said, if we bring in reinforcements, it's going to be something that this team doesn't already have. So look, what doesn't this team have? I would say we're not the most paciest team. I would say Mbaizo and Sergio Santos are probably our two fastest players, but other than that, who's the next fastest? So if we bring in Davo, if we're chasing a goal, bring on pace. And if this guy can score in goals for us, I'm all for it. Skyler, your thoughts on Jim Curtin addressing those rumors?
Yeah, Davo, we have two taller, more target number 9s in Burke and Trebilco. If Davo is quick on his feet and can make those good passes like Sergio can in most moments, that's perfect. You have 2 and 2. But these low-budget, low-profile players in South America is what the Union need to go after. That's what we've seen Atlanta United do. We've seen plenty of other teams do across MLS. And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But, hey, you want to take a shot on it. The Union they're a big market city, but we're a low-profile club, and we don't go after those big names. And going after somebody like Davo and Silva for $1-2 million, it's worth a shot in my book.
Yeah, me too. I mean, look, $15 million Cincinnati's paid for Brenner, and he's not setting the world on fire in Cincinnati. He's not scoring all the time like they thought they would. They went with the same thing with Locadia when they got him on loan from Brighton last season. It's like you bring in these high-profile players for a lot of money, and they're not setting the world on fire. So, look, I'm all for the Union taking a flyer on these guys. And David, look, the Union aren't even having to say, okay, yeah, we're paying a transfer fee right now. They're taking him on loan. If this does happen, it's not official, but maybe by the time you guys listen to this podcast, maybe it gets announced. But I think that's even better. Look, the Union get a chance to look at him for 6 months. Look, the same thing happened with Jamiro Montero, where he impressed so much in 6 months. Ernst Tanner's like, can we just have him for the rest of the season? Because he was playing so well for the Union in those first 6 months. And then eventually the Union bought him because he performed so well in MLS. But how many people knew who Jamiro Montero was? Mets said, yeah, we're done with him. And like I was just talking about, with these Brazilian teams are so desperate for money right now. If Davo hits the world on fire with the Philadelphia Union, then it's a no-brainer that you say, yep, we're going to take up the option to buy. And if he continues to play well, then look, Ernst Tanner just found another diamond in the rough. But yeah, just for fans complaining that, oh, this isn't it, this isn't the player that we need. No, I think these are the exact players that we need, because I can remember when Kai Wagner was signed, people were like, why are we signing a left back? Who's this? For this little bit of money in the third division of German soccer? Like, no, this is not what we want. Kai Wagner is the best left back in the league, and it's going to happen. He's going to go back to Europe eventually. So if we do sign Davo, or if it is Silva, maybe it's a player that hasn't been reported on yet. I trust Ernst Tanner, and I think you guys should as well. But let's go ahead and talk about Orlando City versus the Philadelphia Union. So like I said in the intro, we all know that the Union lost that game 2-1. And overall, I think it was a disappointing night for the Union. That's the fourth time this season that the Union have conceded a goal between minutes 1 through 15. And that's their fifth time between minutes 46 to 60 that they've conceded a goal. 4 times between minutes 1 through 15 and 5 between minutes 46 and 60. I know Jim Curtin said a couple times in his press conferences, oh yeah, we're going to clean things up. And I believe that they are trying to work on it. But yeah, it's disappointing to see, for whatever reason, the Union are starting the game so slow. They don't look like they did last season, where they came out of the gates just firing at teams. To give up 4 goals between those 2 minutes, it's disappointing. And Jim Curtin's also talked about, look, we're a team that's not built from behind. We can't play from behind. We're not played that way. We're built to score the goal first and then shut it down, to pressure you, to hit you on the counterattack. And the one thing I will say is we saw it against Atlanta. They went down by 2 goals. They came back, fired up the attack after they were down by 2 goals. And the same thing happened last night against Orlando. For whatever reason, the Union gave up a second goal, and then 9 minutes later, Casper scores. We saw the craziness in the last few seconds of the game, where the Union very much so could have tied the game up. But the Union have to stop getting themselves in these holes where they go 1-0 down and then just play flat the rest of the first half. They need to not start flat coming out at the break. They've just got to fix those mistakes. And look, if we know this, obviously the players, obviously Jim knows it, and I do think it will eventually get better. But look, the Union have played 6 out of 8 games on the road. That's really tough for teams to play that many games in a row on the road, and especially playing down in Florida right now, where the humidity definitely came into factor last night. But just like I said, just overall really, really disappointed. just the way that the Union started the game last night, at the start of the game and the start of the second half. Out of the Union's 15 goals that they've conceded this season, 4 of them have come in 10 minutes or sooner. So like I said, just the first minute to the 15th minute, bad. But if you really want to get specific and look, the first 10 minutes of the game, for whatever reason, the Union just have been struggling lately. Skyler, your just thoughts from what we saw in the Union last night?
Another lackadaisical play from the first goal by Michel. You have Martinez drifting out wide with Nani, leaves the whole middle of the field wide open. Montero's trying to drift out wide to cover the player out left and leaves the whole middle open for Pereira. And Mbaizo's Bedoya to pay attention and slides the ball right through Mbaizo and Glesnes for the easy goal. It's just lackadaisical play by the Union, especially in the first 10 minutes, like we've been talking about. Jim said it over and over again that they've got to do better in the beginning of games, but it just hasn't happened. Like you said, they're not a team that can play from behind. They're a team that likes to counterattack and play in front and run teams into the ground. But these lackadaisical plays in the beginning of games are killing them, and that's why they're slowly dropping down the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and it's crazy, too, because, look, the Union, they've only conceded 15 goals this season, and still, that's really good. I mean, that's like a goal a game that they're conceding, which, yeah, on paper, it's not great, but they're still really, really solid defensively, in my opinion. But just for whatever reason, the last couple games, they've been starting so slow defensively, and I'm sure we'll get corrected, but it doesn't get any easier against Inter Miami. I know they're struggling, and we'll talk about that later on, but I'm not worrying. And like you said, on that first goal, just if you look back, it all started because it was a giveaway in the attacking third with Sergio Santos. Him and Gazdag tried to do a 1-2, and Sergio played a bad pass. And look, we're going to have those mishaps because Gazdag's still getting used to his teammates. It looks every single game that he plays is getting a little bit better, just understanding the runs, understanding the passes. He saw the run from Jamiro Montero where I know Alan Moreno said that, he should have shot instead of passing the ball. But how many players on this team can see that pass before it's actually going to happen, see the play before it's going to happen? So it's good to see that Gazdag's thinking ahead before that play actually happens, but we're still going to have these mishaps. We're still going to have these headaches where Gazdag and his teammates aren't on the same page, and the more and more they play together, the more they train, they'll get better. But like I said, just the giveaway by Sergio Santos, Orlando, they look to get Nani the ball, which they do, and it allows Nani to just go on a dribble of 30 to 35 yards, and that's unacceptable for Bedoya, for Martinez, for Jamiro, just one of those guys not to put pressure on the ball. The ball eventually gets passed out to Pereira, who, again, no one puts pressure on him. And Mbaizo is focusing out, pointing to Nani. I know Moreno thought that he was pointing his hand up for offsides. No, the Union were just trying to keep track of Nani all game. And so it was Mbaizo saying, look, Nani's out there, out wide. And totally doesn't see the guy slip behind him. I think Brujo could have told Mbaizo that Michel's making the run right behind him, or Mbaizo could have followed Michel's run. Neither of it happened, and easy goal for Orlando City to score right there. And then on the second goal, Orlando City, they get a free kick. They play the ball short. Nani drifts over from the left side to the right side of the field. No one picks him up again. And we saw this so many times. Like I said, just the Union players constantly pointing, where's Nani? Where's Nani? Nani's over there. Make sure Nani's there. They were trying to man mark him every single chance that they got. Every time Nani was on the ball, let's have somebody follow him around the pitch. On that second goal, Nani plays the ball short and nobody follows him. He's able to just walk across the whole midfield to get right. The ball goes out wide left to Smith. Casper doesn't close down the ball, which Smith is able to, again, get Pereira on the ball, who, again, is unmarked. It's so annoying because both of these goals could have been prevented. Miro, he should have closed down Pereira, who's able to pass to Nani, who, like I said, drifted across right. You guys saw the play. Nani unmarked because Kai Wagner is now caught out of position because he wasn't sure if he should close down Smith or should he track back where Nani is. So now that gets Jack Elliott out of position to close down Nani. He's too slow to it. Kai Wagner is walking back slowly, who I think could have made a play on Nani to prevent the cross, and For whatever reason, Glesnes just had a poor mark, and Orlando City is able to get the second goal. But like I was talking about, after that second goal, we saw it against Atlanta. We saw it against Orlando City. The Union give the second goal up. Now it's like, okay, we need to wake up. We need to get this goal back. And a beautiful ball it was by Bizo to find Kasper Schebelko, but just too little too late for the Union.
The man marking by Glesnes on the second goal, he should have been way up on Pereira, I think it was. That's with the second goal. But Jack Elliott's in no man's land when Wagner's coming back way too slow on Nani to close him out for the cross. So he's in no man's land right inside our 18 box. Ball goes right above his head. Glesnes is 5 yards away from Pereira. Nothing Freeze can do about that. He had nothing to do on both those goals. He was left for dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know if you're on Facebook. The Philadelphia Union started a Facebook page called the Dupe Squad. And so I was reading people's comments. They're like, oh, yeah, Matt Freeze is trash. He's always been trash. He's played bad the last couple games. Like you said, neither one of those goals were Matt Freeze's fault. What was he supposed to do? I thought, look, Orlando City, they didn't threaten that much on the night. They got the 2 goals, and they were 2 crucial goals. Matt Freeze wasn't that active at all on the night. Just what's he going to do? Like you said, Jacob Glesnes left his guy unmarked 5 yards. Couldn't even put a challenge on him. First goal, nobody picks up Michel. And that's nothing Matt Freeze can do. He comes out of the goal in the first goal to try to make himself as big as he can. But odds are when the player's that close to scoring a goal, one-on-one versus the goalie, you always have your money on the attacker because more times than not, they're going to put the ball in the back of the net. So for people saying, oh, Matt Freeze is trash, put in Joe Bendick, we need Andre Blake. Without Andre Blake, we're just an average team. No, I don't think that. And you're always going to have fans like that in the fan base, but hopefully the majority of the Union fans don't feel that way. And look, no excuses for Matt Freeze, but the dude, I'm sure, is still hurt that he lost his father. I mean, at a young age, to lose your father that age, I can only imagine what he's going through. And yeah, he's a professional soccer player and you want to try to drown out all that noise and everything, but it's still got to be hard. And then getting that red card against New York Red Bulls, where I'm sure he still feels bad about that. I can't blame Matt Freeze at all on the night. So for people that are blaming Matt Freeze, I think it's a joke, but I do want to go ahead and talk about what a lot of people are complaining about on social media, and that is, why doesn't Jim sub out Ali Bedoya a lot earlier? So I will play another clip about just Jim's thoughts on why he decided to bring Ali out when he did. So here's Jim.
We talk about it, Jonathan. Look, Ali's our captain. He's our leader. Again, we're going to be smart, though. I started to feel like, with him, I know he could have gutted through the 90 minutes, but at the same time, I think it was important to get fresh legs out there. I didn't want him to risk injury. Obviously, he's still only a couple weeks off of a previous injury. And in this type of climate where he's just trying to push so hard, you can kind of, reach for a ball that maybe you shouldn't, and you can damage yourself and you can hurt yourself. So we'll be proactive in that regard. We'll put a team out on the field that is fresh, that's ready to go, but also one that has to win a game. That's the bottom line. So it's important in these trips, and I stressed it a lot before the game, to get a result in the first one, so you're not chasing things. But again, despite a good effort and a really good performance, we have to chase points now. So that's the reality of the situation. We'll put a group out there that is, again, ready to compete, ready to press Miami, and again, a difficult climate.
I get it. Ali Bedoya is older in age, and at times it looked like he was pretty gassed and everything. But we've heard this in the past from Jim Curtin in his press conference. I believe it was the lead up to this game. He was asked about, okay, you have 5 midfielders now for 4 spots. How are you going to go about that? And Jim said, yeah, we're not going to go on form. We're going to go on tactics. And He made it a point to mention Ali Bedoya specifically, and he said he's our captain, he's our leader. You just heard it right there on the clip again, and again, he says the same thing. Ali's our captain, he's our leader, and for a lot of people out there, they would probably say, yeah, sit Ali Bedoya, but for Jim to keep bringing it up in the press conference saying, Ali's our leader, he's our captain, we need him out there, I think we have 4 midfielders for 3 spots because Jim's just so relentless in not bringing out Ali Bedoya. He always says Ali can go 90 minutes, and there's times where it looks like Ali Bedoya is just gasping for air out there. And at the same time, too, we do see Ali Bedoya push it a lot of times from the start of the game to the 90 minutes. But at that age that Ali Bedoya is at now, like Jim said, you could stretch for a ball and get hurt. And we saw LCU get hurt and be out for 2+ months. And so I would hate for that to happen to Ali Bedoya. You know, the older you get, the longer it takes for your body to recover. So I get it. A lot of fans are like, oh, take out Bedoya. But your opinion, Skyler, why do you think we don't see Bedoya get subbed out? Or do you honestly believe what Jim's saying? He's our captain. We can't afford to take him out.
As the head coach, you're going to want to keep in your captain at all times, no matter if he's gassed or not. But you can tell when it gets to that 75th minute, 80th minute in a high intense game, his legs are just gone. And at that point in time, I would take him out. You have good young kids in McGlynn and Sullivan that you can put into that flanker spot. So there's no rhyme or reason why Jim isn't taking him out, besides he's the heart and soul of this team and he's the engine, and you want him out there at all times. But I think gradually, once we get a little bit towards the end of the season, you'll start to see Jim giving him some rest during the game and even a spot bench game. And honestly, I would like to see him sit against Inter Miami, maybe come in at the end of the game if we're chasing it, which we hope we aren't. But I would like to see McGlynn or Sullivan get the start, or even put Flock in there. I mean, he sat on the bench the other night, and he deserved to be in the starting lineup just like all the 4 other guys. But I agree with Jim in some capacity, but you got to know when to take him out. And Ollie knows when he needs to come out, but he wants to stay in. But that's got to change once we get to the nitty-gritty of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you spot on there. And any professional player is like, oh, I can go. You see it all the time in sports where the player's clearly out of gas, or it looks like they have a little bit of an injury. And he's like, no, I can stay out, coach. I can stay out. And then when they stay out, then that's when the serious injury happens. So don't want to see that happen with Ali Bedoya. And I know Jim was also talking about just, Ali is only a few months removed from an injury, and yeah, he looks fine and everything, but you don't want to re-aggravate that. And like I said earlier, you don't want to be playing soccer down in Miami, down in Orlando in the middle of July when it's as hot as it can be, the humidity. I mean, the intensity from the Union was really great. Like, I think I made a tweet where the Union were winning a lot of the 50-50 balls. The press seemed like it was working against Orlando City. But Dave Johnson, who I had on this podcast here a couple of episodes ago, he made it a point when the first time he came onto the podcast, he said, DC United don't want to be playing the way that Orlando City played against us, where Orlando City scored a goal and the rest of the game they parked the bus. They were fine with a 1-0 lead. And we saw that a little bit at night against Orlando City, where they score the first goal. And now they have 7, 8 men behind the ball. And now they're just having a straight line. They're telling the Union, okay, if you want to attack us, chip the ball over the top, which the Union were doing quite often and finding Sergio Santos. But it's when Sergio was trying to cut the ball back in, find runners. There was 7, 8 defenders back there for Orlando City. And now you just got to hope that a cross in the box finds a Union player's head. But with so many players back there for Orlando City, odds are they weren't going to find that player. And that's what we saw Mbaizo do. Instead of playing the ball in the air, he plays the ball on the field, and Casper is able to just one-time the ball into the net. Fantastic finish. But at the same time, too, this is where we've been saying for the last couple months, we need another player, another creative player, and we get Daniel Gazdag in. And Daniel Gazdag's supposed to open up the midfield, and he's playing really well, I think, but he's still getting acclimated to his teammates. He's still getting used to the way that the Union want to play. Jamir Montero is able to split a defense and everything, but when you have 7, 8 players behind the ball when you're parking the bus in a straight line and everything, it's really hard for the Union to just go straight down the middle. So, I'm with you. I would like to see Ali Bedoya rest against Inter Miami, and we'll go over our predictions for who we think will start, who will rest against Inter Miami. But another point I want to bring up is people were talking about on Twitter. Mike Thomas brought this up on Twitter and said, yeah, our attack's been terrible, not just this game, but the whole season down the left side of the field. And yeah, I looked up why is that? And if you look, the Union's last 4 games, most of their attacks have been coming down the right side of the field. Where if you go ahead and look, the game against Orlando City, the Union attacked the right side of the field 48% of the time, where the left side of the field, the attack only came down 21% of the time. Bizo had 81 touches against Orlando. Wagner had 55 touches. You go at the game of DC, Bizo had 67 touches. Wagner had 57 touches. You pull up the stats for that. 41% of the attacks went down the right side of the field, where 36 came on the left side of the field against DC. You look at New York Red Bulls, 82 touches for Bizo, 77 for Wagner. You go ahead and you look, okay, where did the Union mostly attack in that game? 49% went down the right side of the field. 27 went down the left side of the field. You go ahead, you look against Nashville, 89 touches for Bizo against Nashville, 77 touches for Wagner against Nashville. And this is the most lopsided that it's been. 50% of the attacks went down the right side of the field against Nashville for the Union, while 27 went down the left side of the field. Now, you look at it a little bit too, where against Orlando, Kai Wagner had 7 crosses, Bizo had 6. Okay, yeah, Kai Wagner crossed the ball more by 1, even though he had far less touches than Bizo did. Bizo against New York Red Bulls, he had 4 crosses, Wagner had 7. Okay, yeah, again, Kai Wagner had more crosses, but then against DC, Bizo had more, and against Nashville, he had more, 4 and 9 compared to 3 and 5 for Wagner. So the Union, they're not going down the left side of the field like we saw a lot of the time last year, because I think teams respect the left foot of Kai Wagner, where they're like, okay, let's double mark this guy. Let's not let him get as far forward as we can. But at the same time, too, Leon Flock, every time he plays at that number 8 on the left side of the field, he's sending in some good crosses too. So the Union aren't attacking as much with Kai Wagner because Leon Flock's playing so well on the left side of the field. And look, let's face it, we all love Ray Gaddis for what he did defensively, but attacking-wise, it was non-existent. So I think the Union figured out, look, we finally have a player that can play on the right side of the field, that can send crosses in from the right side of the field, and Bizo's playing really well on the right side of the field, and teams, for whatever reason, aren't closing down on Bizo as much as they are Kai Wagner. So I think that's why we continue to see the Union attack more down the right side of the field than they do the left, just because teams are giving Bizo so much space on the right side of the field. Real quick there, I forgot to bring this up. So my keys to the game, I know I did not record an episode to preview this game. Scheduling conflicts came up and everything, so my apologies for that. But if I was going to record an episode, my 3 keys to the game for the Union were: 1, you got to score first. And I know in my notes it said that might sound simple, but if you look at the stats, not including what happened on Thursday night, the Union, when they scored first, they were 6 wins, 1 loss, and no draws. And whenever Orlando scored first, they were 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. So both of those teams, they hardly blow a lead when they score first. And what happens? The Union concede first, and they lose the game. So that's a fail right there. My point number 2 was test Orlando City from distance. 3 of Orlando's 13 goals that they've given up this season have come from outside of the penalty area. Orlando, and they've also scored 3 goals from outside the penalty area, but they didn't test Matt Freese from distance. The Union did, and I'm trying to think who... Sullivan, I think maybe it was. He was inside the penalty box, but it was not a close shot at all. It was like right there at the 18. And let's say he spills the ball for Orlando City, and if a Union player was there, there's an easy tap in. And so I was hoping that the Union would test him a lot more in the night, and it just didn't happen. And so look, there's another fail right there. And point number 3, again, something so simple, but continue to keep track of Nani. And like we were talking about earlier, the Union players were constantly pointing out, where's Nani? And Nani, up to that point, he played 3 games against the Union in MLS, and they've yet to allow him to score a goal. Last night, he did not score, but he got yet another assist. That's now his 3rd assist against the Union. And Nani, he does lead Orlando City in 7 goals. So good job. The Union didn't give up a goal from Nani, but Nani was on the ball a lot, and he hurt the Union with that cross. So all 3 of my keys to the game for the Union to get a win, they failed in. So it's disappointing. It was so simple for the Union to not concede those goals. Simple mistakes, but I'm sure they'll get it corrected. Just anything else you want to bring up about this game before we move on? Any players that impressed you, Skyler?
Quinn Sullivan. He's been on a tear when coming in games. He's attacking like no other. He was relentless last night. He had 3 shots on goal in his 20 minutes played. He had 10 touches. He won 1 out of his two duels. He had 1 dribble completed, 2 recoveries, and he had that fantastic shot at the death, but it gets saved off his face, and we get the loss. But he was honestly my favorite player last night that I thought played phenomenal, and I think deserved more minutes in the future. But the game, it just wasn't the Union's night from the start. Simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Jim also said, when the ball hits off the player's face and hits the post, it just tells you that it's not your night. And it obviously wasn't the Union's night. I mean, still, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I don't know how that ball doesn't go in. I mean, look, the Glesnes goal, it hit the crossbar 3 times and it found a way to go in the back of the net. Like, that, I've never seen that happen before in soccer. And to see the ball hit off of the defender's face, still hit the post, not going. I mean, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. And just last night wasn't Union's night. A player I would bring up who I thought was excellent was Brujo. Defensively, he saved the defense a couple times. He had that block shot with his butt. He had 3 clearances, 3 tackles, 3 interceptions, 49 out of 56 completed passes, which is good for 88%. But the one thing that just amazes me every single game about him is his long ball accuracy. He completed 8 out of 9 long balls, and that's the one question mark that this team had when Harris left is who can play those balls that Harris played with his left foot. We were like, we can't replace that. Well, Jose is doing exactly that with his right foot. And just defensively, we know how good this guy is. But offensively, with him just spreading the ball all around the field, I'm just amazed by him every single game. So, yeah, Quinn Sullivan, I thought he was excellent. Paxton Aronson gave the Union a little bit of something. Jack McGlynn, he was good. And hopefully Quinn Sullivan gets some more time against Inter Miami. But, yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on Orlando City. I think you're probably good on Orlando City. A lot of negatives and not a whole lot of positives. So I do want to go ahead and give Blunder of the Week real quick, which I'm probably going to regret giving this because this game against Inter Miami is like your typical game where the Union should win. And Jim's like, I don't want our players thinking that. I don't want them in that mindset. But yeah, my Blunder of the Week is going to go to just Inter Miami as a whole. How do you hire Phil Neville, who did nothing with the English women's national team? They've lost 6 games in a row. They get blown out 5-0. Paul Pogba and Mbappe are in the audience. Both of them play for the French national team. So Messi, I know, was in town. I don't think he went to the game. But it's like you guys draw in all sorts of people because it's Miami. And this team doesn't look good at all. To be the highest spending team in MLS, to get the performances that they're getting, and maybe I should give the Philadelphia Union the Blunder of the Week for losing to these guys in the first place. And that's just a joke of a franchise to see that not only are they not getting it right in the front office with the hires of the front office, there's reports that now minority owners want to leave into Miami because I guess maybe they see, this whole franchise is a dumpster fire. Now the DP players aren't playing well. The whole team's just a mess down there. And yeah, I guess it's cool. You're based in Miami. You're getting a beautiful stadium, but to get blown out 5-0 and show not a care in the world. Yeah, that's not good for Phil Neville and the coaching staff of Inter Miami. So there we go. Blunder of the week. Like I said, I'm hoping that does not come back and haunt me because this should be a winnable game for the Union against Inter Miami. But like I said, we lost to them in Chester in April 2-1. The Higuain brothers look like they were in their prime. And look, this game shouldn't scare me, but it absolutely does. Because what would Miami love more than pissing off the Union, sending them back to Chester with 0 points in Florida? They're going to be motivated. And for people to say that the players don't care, that nobody cares on that team in the coaching staff, I don't believe that. I just think that Phil Neville's not a great coach. I think that they definitely should have went with a different hire. Maybe some of these DP signings they probably shouldn't have made. Higuain, don't know why they brought him in. But again, it's a big name, and names attract people to soccer games, I guess. But I think Higuain or no Higuain, no Matuidi, they were going to attract fans regardless because it's Miami. Everybody goes to Miami. A lot of the people down in Miami like soccer. So whether you have a superstar or not, I think people would have went to the stadium because, look, David Beckham's the owner of this team, and
he just attracts everybody and anybody.
He does, and I don't know, man. I felt more confident going into that Orlando game than I do against Inter Miami, and I don't know if that's because the Union lost against Orlando, but this just screams to me like, yeah, this is a game that the Union could lose. And look, just going back, I know we keep saying a lot of Jim said, because Jim does say a lot of good things in his press conference. And he said, we'll make some minimum changes against Miami. And like you said, yeah, I would sit Bedoya against Miami. I would put Leon Flock in there on the left side of the diamond, move Jamir Montero to the right side of the diamond. Go with the same back four. No to these people that are still convinced that Matt Freese sucks. No, I'm not putting in Joe Bendick, even though we played good against DC. You got to give Matt Freese as much game time as you can. A young goalkeeper like him, showing that, yeah, we trust in you. You are eventually going to be the future of this team. So, yeah, keep throwing Matt Freese out there. He wasn't tested that much against Orlando City. Like I said, the midfield, I would sit Bedoya as well. Put Leon, like I said, on the left side of the field. Keep Gazag at the 10, Brujo at the 6, and then go with Sergio and Kasper Schmeichel up top. But because Quinn played so good, you could convince me to put Quinn Sullivan up there and have Sergio Santos come off the bench. Skyler's saying, yep, that's it.
I would love that. That's what I was honestly thinking. But we know Jim. We lost against Orlando. We need those 3 points. I can honestly see Jim going with the same starting 11, or even I can see him sitting Gazdag and sliding Montero back up and putting Flock on the left. I could see him keeping Bedoya in. I just have a gut feeling that's what Jim's going to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just all this talk, he's our captain. He's going to put him out there. And look, Jim Curtin also gave an injury update, said Jamiro Montero hurt his ankle. Jim thought it was going to be worse than it was, but Jamiro came to practice today, said feels good. So Jim expects Jamiro to be available against Inter Miami. El Sino, he said, will get some kind of capacity, whether it be the Union winning or losing. He should play his part in there just to get his fitness up. Anthony Fontana has we finally had a player pass the concussion test. Anthony Fontana has passed his concussion test. Still no Jack DeVries, still in concussion protocol. But to get 2 attacking players on the bench where, like you said, let's hope that we're not playing from behind against Inter Miami. But to see El Sino and Anthony Fontana more than likely be on the bench against this game, that's good news for Union fans. And I tried to look up the player availability report for Inter Miami. MLS hasn't updated that yet for Inter Miami. So, yeah, I couldn't tell you who's available, who isn't for Inter Miami. Sorry, guys. You guys, I'm sure, will find out probably tomorrow. But with us recording Friday night, MLS still hasn't released that information. So it makes it a little bit hard for Union fans to figure out who's playing, who's not. But I guess it shouldn't matter who's playing for Inter Miami with them playing as bad as they are, but don't feel good, Skyler. I don't feel good.
Yeah, they're on a 6-game losing streak right now. I just looked up, and hey, they're at home. They're just coming off a 5-0 domination by New England, and they want to ruin the Union's chances at getting points. That's a perfect opportunity for them. The Union better not go into this game thinking they got an easy cakewalk.
It's going to be anything but that. And look, I'm talking about I'm nervous, I'm scared. And there's a lot of people on Twitter that are saying they're panicking. 3 of the Union's next 5 games are at home. The next five games are Inter Miami away, obviously, Chicago home, Toronto home, New England away, New York City at home. So to have 3 of the next 5 games at home, the Union, in my opinion, they've got to get a minimum of 10 out of 15 points in those next 5 games, in my opinion. That New England game is going to be tough. They always are a tough game. New York City, we never play good against them, and I know it's at home. Chicago should have beat them in Chicago, but we all remember that game, 3-3. Toronto, I know they're low in MLS standings, but they still got some players on their team, and I don't expect a 5-0 victory against Toronto like we saw last year in Chester. But 10 out of 15 has to be the minimum in these next 5 games.
Definitely. You got a struggling Miami squad. You have an okay Chicago squad after struggling early on in the season. Then you got the Toronto FC that are starting to play better as well with Hosey coming back. But in these next 3 games with these teams, especially 2 coming up at home, you got to get at least 7 points, if not all 9. The Union need the points to stay in the Eastern Conference. We just dropped down to 3rd now. From 2nd place to 7th, it's a matter of 3 points. The Union have got to keep getting results if they want to even stay in the playoff hunt right now, because the Eastern Conference is stacked at this time.
Yeah, it is stacked. And look, I'm not panicking because we're not even halfway through the season yet. There's 34 games to be played. The Union have only played 15 games. Once you guys listen to this episode, it will be 16 after Inter Miami. But I'm not worried yet. But if the Union don't get at least 10 points in the next 5 games, then yeah, maybe I will panic a little bit, because Skyler just gave you guys just a separation right there from 2nd to 7th, or 3rd to 7th. It's not much separation. And look, New England were dropping points. Orlando City were dropping points. And the Union weren't able to capitalize. And I get it. I hear people saying, yeah, I mean, we should have capitalized, which the Union should have capitalized. But we're not even halfway through the season. Why are we panicking? And yes, the Union have given up 2+ goals in 5 of their 15 games. And those 5 games, they've given up 2+ goals. They've lost those games. 5 of those that they've given up 2 goals, they've lost 3 of them. So, yeah, whenever the Union give up 2 goals, more than likely they're not going to win. And in the last 5 games, the 1 win, 2 draws, 2 losses. In the last 7, only 2 wins. So, yeah, it's not been great for the Union. But also, when you look at a lot of these teams in MLS, a lot of these games are being played at New England's home. They're being played in Orlando City's home, where the Union, like I said earlier, 6 out of the last 8 games for the Union have been played on the road. So it's a tough task to tell this team to, okay, you got to constantly go on the road to get points. You got to constantly be away from Chester, where they play good. But at the same time, too, the Union only have 2 losses on the road. They typically play well on the road. I guess now 3 losses on the road. No, 2, because they lost to Nashville and Orlando. Let's hope it's not 3 against Inter Miami. The Union should win this one 2-0. 2-1. I'd be mad if they give up a goal, but could it happen? Yes. I'll say 2-0 Union, but I'm honestly not confident in saying that. I'm not.
Yeah, I would say 2-0 Union too, and I'm not that confident, but hopefully we need a shutout. Freeze would love a shutout, and if that's what the Union need right now to get us going back on a winning streak.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much all I have. Skyler, anything else you want to bring up on the podcast?
Let's just hope for a good streak of games coming up for the Philadelphia Union, and hopefully we rise back up in the Eastern Conference standings.
Absolutely. Well, before I let you go, Skyler, for people that aren't following you on social media, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at, what is that? That is Sky_Hoff3. And you can follow the page that I write for, which is Philadelphia Sports Nation, Union Nation.
Absolutely. I say it all the time. We can never have enough Union content, because I was thinking about this on my way here, right? I was like, we are pretty lucky that we have so many people who show up to Jim Curtin's press conference. We're so lucky that we have so many people that are writing about the Union, talking about the Union, because who was it? I think this week with Joseph Martinez doing a press conference down in Atlanta, which he never does. They were like, yeah, this is the most people we've ever had in a press conference. I think they had 50 people. They said 50 plus. And typically, I think it's only like 2 or 3 people that show up to the press conferences down in Atlanta, which is terrible. And we, have constantly 8, 9 people, I feel like, showing up. And
at max, we have about like 15 on some good nights.
Now, like I said earlier, Skyler and I aren't asking the questions, but we're there,
we let all the big shots take them, and we just sit back. But you'll hear us once in a while.
Hopefully, right? I just gotta, I do fine on the podcast. It's like, I do fine on the podcast, but it's like, just look, I know my questions will be good. I just need to do it. Just get it out there. So I don't know why I don't. I just got to get over that bridge right there. But
feel the same way.
Hey, look, I'm glad you're in the same boat. We'll get there, Skyler. We'll get there. But for people who aren't following the podcast on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod. Check out the website that I don't write on, thefreekickpodcast.com. Wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And Skyler, hey, had a blast having you on the podcast. Been wanting to get you on for a while, and glad we were able to get this arranged on such short notice. Can't wait to have you back on to the podcast to talk all things Philadelphia Union. And like I said, you're doing great work at Philly Union Nation, and I know you'll continue doing it.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Well, I'll see you guys after that Inter Miami game. Let's hope for 3 points like we both said. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.